Hey, super scientists, we're looking at Geo 8 and we're going to be talking about the eras of geologic time. So remember that the geologic time scale is a timeline of Earth's history, and it shows us the important events that have occurred and the different living organisms that would have been found throughout Earth's history. So we had the Precambrian time, which took up 88% of Earth's history, and after Precambrian time is the Paleozoic Era. So if you look at the word Paleozoic, paleo means ancient, zo means animal. So the Paleozoic Era refers to ancient animals. So the beginning of the Paleozoic started with what is referred to as the Cambrian explosion. Notice the word Cambrian here, Cambrian period, which came right after the Precambrian time. So during this time, we have a lot of biodiversity, a lot of organisms in the oceans specifically that begin to flourish and to evolve. A lot of these animals are going to be invertebrates. And during the Ordovician period, which is right after the Cambrian period, we start to see these jawless fish. And so they are a fish without a jaw. And so they just had this kind of circular mouth. And so they essentially weren't chewing the food, they were kind of just slurping the food. And they were the first vertebrates, so the first organisms that had a backbone. The Silurian period, we're going to see a lot of plants that are flourishing and the first insects. The Devonian is referred to as the age of fishes, and that's because there are a lot of different types of fish. So you may look at this word fishes and say, oh, well, shouldn't that be fish? Isn't fish plural for fish? Well, yeah, it is, except if you're referring to a lot of different types of fish, like a lot of different species, then usually you'll see the word fishes, and that's why it's referred to as age of fishes, and that's because you had lots of different types of fish. So fish were very prevalent during the Devonian, and animals started to come on land. So prior to this, we had lots of animals that were in the water, a lot of biodiversity of organisms that were in the water, but now during the Devonian, you start to see animals that are living on land as well. The Carboniferous is one of my favorite periods, and that's because it has something super unique, has giant insects. And there have been fossils discovered of giant insects, and that's how scientists knew that they existed. So millipedes, like 5 or 6 feet long, literally could rear up on their back and be taller than you. Meganeura, which are ginormous dragonflies. These dragonflies had the wingspan of your arms. So if you extend your arms outward, dragonflies were that big. They were ginormous. It's really cool. And at the end of the Paleozoic, there's a mass extinction, and a lot of plants and animals were affected. Of course, a lot of these larger organisms, we see their descendants today, but they're certainly not that big. And one of the theories that scientists have is that there was so much oxygen in the atmosphere during this time that the insects could grow to be so much larger because of all the oxygen that was available to them. So the Permian period is the last period in the Paleozoic. It's about 260 million years ago, and we have Pangaea forming. So this is our famous supercontinent. So all the continents ended up being connected together. And then we start to see it breaking apart in our next era, which is the Mesozoic. So that's what this image is showing you. It's showing you the Permian, so all the continents are connected together, and then it begins kind of breaking apart into larger sections and into our continents. So at the end of the Paleozoic era was a mass extinction that's probably due to climate change from continental drift. So all the continents were not connected throughout the Paleozoic, and then towards the end of the Paleozoic, they start all kind of converging together. And that means some continents are at different locations and will have different access to sunlight. So the ones that are closer to the equator are going to be warmer, the ones further away are going to be colder. So like Australia and India are down here, they're going to be much colder than they would be at present-day locations. So the Mesozoic era is next. So we have Precambrian, and then we have Paleozoic, and now we're at the Mesozoic era. So the Mesozoic era is the age of reptiles. Why is it the age of reptiles? Because the dinosaurs. So the Triassic period, we start to see dinosaurs and mammals The mammals were very small and kind of rat-like creatures. And then we start to see plants that are called conifers, and these are culm-bearing plants like our pine trees. Next, we have the Jurassic period. Dinosaurs were the dominant species during the Mesozoic, and they were the dominant prevalent species in the Jurassic. And this was over the course of about 150 million years. And the Cretaceous. So the Cretaceous period is the last period in the Mesozoic era, and we start to see flowering plants. So prior to this, we didn't have plants that really produced flowers, but we started to see a lot of them during the Cretaceous. And dinosaurs are still dominant right up until about 65 million years ago when they went extinct. So one thing to keep in mind, a lot of people think about all the dinosaurs living together and holding hands and singing Kumbaya. So the dinosaurs were not all happy, friendly dinosaurs that lived at the same time. There were different dinosaurs that lived during the Triassic, different dinosaurs that lived during the Jurassic, different ones that lived during the Cretaceous, like the T-Rex and Triceratops. Those are ones that specifically were Cretaceous dinosaurs. So you're not going to see those in the fossil record really prior to that. So what happens with the Mesozoic era? Well, it ends 65 million years ago from an asteroid hitting the Earth. So there's evidence at the Chicxulub crater in Mexico. There's undersea evidence of that particular impact. And also the iridium layer, the layer of the element iridium that is specifically a space element. It's found in asteroids, and there's a layer of it 65 million years old all around the world. Cenozoic Era is next, so that is our last and current era. So it's called the Age of Mammals. So we do have reptiles still during the Cenozoic, but we don't have dinosaurs, and they're not the dominant species. Mammals are dominant. We have the Tertiary first, and during the Tertiary, the climates are going to be kind of warm and mild. We have ocean mammals like dolphins and things like that that begin evolving. And the Quaternary. So the Quaternary is when we have a series of ice ages. And yeah, similar to the movie Ice Age, right, with the mammoths and things like that. And people, there were what we refer to as cavemen, our ancestors, that were living during the earlier Cenozoic and the Quaternary. Homo sapiens evolved about 100,000 years ago. So these were some of our earlier ancestors. And earlier humans actually hunted mammoths. They would work together to hunt mammoths. And then that would provide them with nourishment and also clothing and bones, using the bones as structure for their homes and things like that.